I dressed up today, and it's not every day that I decide to dress up because it's not every day that I get to interview the potential premier of British Columbia. So I'm excited to have Warren Hamm here, one of the conservative candidates, to have an interview. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you bringing me on. And yeah, thanks for putting the suit and tie back on. You're looking good.
Thanks so much. Well, you're looking good as well. And I look forward to this interview because a lot of British Columbia residents probably have never heard of you before. So this is an opportunity for people to get to know you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm the guy that had no social media up until a little while ago. I had it many years ago, but I decided to keep myself private. And that's changed in the last few months. So we're kind of coming from behind on the social media front. Thank goodness I'm as good looking as I am to get my face back out there on morning radio, as they say. I'm a British Columbian through and through. I've lived in this province my whole life. My mom was an Australian traveling here many years ago when she met my dad and settled down here in British Columbia. I was born in Vancouver, lived in the Okanagan. My dad worked for Alcan in the Okanagan and also in Prince George. So spent some time in Prince George through my early years. And then we settled in the Caribou region, Williams Lake, 100 Mile House. I graduated high school in 100 Mile House. I was actually student council president of our school. We had about 250 in our graduating class in our senior high school. So I was able to represent the students there as a youngster. Funny enough, I used to wear a tie to school. So I spent more time in a suit in the last 2 months and in grade 12 than I have in between. So interesting, the life cycle of, starting as a youngster in diapers. And then by the time you're 17, you're in a suit representing your student body. And then, when you're in your mid 50s, like I am at 56, I'm back in a suit. And then I'm sure diapers will follow as I get into my 70s and 80s.
I hope not. But you know what? 100 Mile House, that's a beautiful part of British Columbia. I went camping to Green Lake, and what a beautiful place that is.
Yeah, Green Lake's gorgeous. And my folks had a place north of the town of Lacklahash, about 20 minutes north of 100 Mile House, 25 minutes. So we grew up on the water. We were a big water baby family. We were big water skiers. My brother is a scientist who lives in California, has his own bioanalytical laboratory. So he's involved in the design of drugs for cancer and different eye surgeries, that sort of thing. He's a real specialist. So my brother and I water skied a lot growing up and traveled back and forth on the bus to high school where we graduated. And then we both went off. My brother went off to university a few years behind me. And I went off to technical college in Dawson Creek.
Nice. So tell me about your campaign slogan that you have. And then from there, I have some questions.
Yeah. So our campaign slogan is "We're builders, not bureaucrats." And I guess I want to make that clear that I come from the community. My dad was a builder, so I grew up building things. And as an aircraft maintenance engineer, which is where I went to school in Dawson Creek for aircraft maintenance engineering, I got my pilot's license. So we've been focused on fixing things and building things for, since I was a youngster. Excited to have traveled the province with my original trade. And we've renovated homes from Prince Rupert, Campbell River, and settled in Rossland the last 25 years, where we've really, grown our family. My two daughters are both nurses. And in that community, we've been building. I built a neighborhood pub with no neighborhood back in 1998, and then the neighborhood grew up around it, and we were a big part of that. We're one of the key people that helped develop around Rossland and Red Mountain Resort, in a resort town where tourism was super important. So yeah, builders, not bureaucrats. My political experience is zero, frankly. I got asked to be on the board of directors for one of our MPs, Helena Conan's, back in August. And so from there, it's blossomed into sitting before you here, months away from our leadership vote. And I'm excited to be the leader of the Conservative Party and the next Premier of British Columbia.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that you touched on your family because last week I had the opportunity to meet your two beautiful daughters and your wife, and they are fantastic. Great family
Yeah,
you have.
thanks. They've been very supportive. They're not one for the limelight, so it was great to see them out and introduce them to key people like yourself and the other 150 guests that we had at the event. It was interesting to get them on TV for one of the TV channels was there, Sanja TV, out of Surrey, and they were able to get some FaceTime on TV, which is not very comfortable for them, but they're very supportive in the background. And without family, I mean, everyone in this province needs the support of their family to get through tough times and through big decisions. But I'm grateful to have them backing me, and they understand the need this province has for a real leader and the time and energy it's going to take to go into it. It's a 7-day-a-week job. I have the bandwidth for 10 years. I've cleared my schedule to be your next leader and your next premier.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to your daughters because they seem really grounded. You did a great job with them. And it's also nice to know that you're a real person and with a real family. So that was great. All right, let's talk about something that a lot of these questions you probably have never answered before, but they're interesting. And I think it's going to be a good part for people to get to know you. So before going into this leadership run and before politics and leadership, what kind of kid were you? And how did you turn into someone that builds instead of someone that complains?
Well, it's funny what kind of kid I was. So, growing up with my dad, who was a builder, worked in commercial, like I said, Alcan, and then, was a self-employed businessman working, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. We didn't see my dad a lot except at work if we were helping him on the weekends or working through the summertime. So, my first project was at about the age of 9. I built a 2-story, 300 square foot building or shed or fort or whatever you want to call it. And I learned a lot of things like putting metal on a roof. If you don't put it on properly and you don't square things up, you'll get your roof line on, but it'll look a little funny from the bottom. So I was able to get great advice from my dad and a lot of instruction growing up, building fence lines, putting on roofs, insulating attics, you name it, building hay sheds for farmers and ranchers, getting firewood. I hated getting firewood in the last 2 weeks of August. I wanted to be water skiing, but my dad would have us out there getting firewood every weekend so that we could, have wood in the basement for the wintertime. So grew up working really hard. My first job was actually in elementary school, working at a grocery store, in elementary school. So I've been working for a long time. I've got a lot of experience, and I want to bring that to the province and the practical experience and common sense that I've learned over the last 40 years.
So would you say your dad had the largest influence in your life?
Yeah, I think so. I had some teachers at school that were also really good mathematicians. One gentleman, Mr. Hamm, worked for Weights and Balances in England, and he was pretty instrumental. And I had some amazing schoolmates. I was the guy that was welcome in every peer group in high school. So I think that's why I was sort of chosen as student council president. I was welcome in every group. So I was able to bring people together at the high school level, and every group welcomed me into their group. And it was a time when Rick Hansen was running his Man in Motion tour. So we raised a lot of money for that as well. And, I was in my suit and tie out in the community, raising money and representing my high school and the people in the area. So I'm grateful to come from really grounded grassroots, growing up, riding the bus to school every day. So yeah, grateful for a real grounded childhood and youth.
To run for this, to be the premier of a province, it takes a special person. So when did you realize you're wired differently than most people?
Well, it's funny, I've done a lot of things up until August of this last year, or actually I think it was October, and we had a Christmas party with our local association that they've asked me to run, if I would put my name in to run as an MLA in the next election. So I agreed to do it. But we had a bit of a Christmas party, and I was going, I don't really have an experience in this political field, and they laughed at me. They reiterated to people I was having dinner with, people on our board, that look at all the experience and sort of listed stuff out. And as I did some research, I realized that my experience level is significant, especially compared to, my peers that are running in this race and are also running for MLA. So I thought, I'm going to be a pretty qualified MLA. And then that sort of morphed into, when John Rustad stepped down, I mean, people reached out to me from across the province begging me to run for leadership and become the next premier. I think they see me as a very common sense, grounded alternative that's able to build teams and bring the best people together for a common purpose, which is getting our economy back on track and treating all British Columbians equal, regardless of their affiliation and political party.
Man, I look forward to going deep on some of these topics. I think this leads perfectly to, there must have been a moment where you were watching BC politics in the province and you're like, you know what? I need to step in. So with that being said, when was that moment where you said, enough, I'm tired of sitting on the sidelines anymore?
Well, I've watched the division for so long, and, everybody's either they're fighting with each other. We've got an NDP government that just believes in constant handouts. And I look at the mismanagement, this last budget, 13.3 billion in the hole. I don't think the general public understands, and that's with no disrespect to the public, but I think we're paying better part of $7 billion a year in interest payments, alone. And so, this ship is on its side and it's sliding up against the rocks. So it's going to take some time to get it back on track. And, it was just time for me to step in, bring my skill set. I've been in civil construction, new home construction, aviation, consulting management, it's time to put a practical leader in, because what we've been doing the last 15, 20 years isn't working. And so I think if we choose a leader that has all this political experience, especially some that have been doing it for 10 or 15 years and expect change, I don't know if we're going to get the change. I think we're just going to get a different flavor of the same meal. And, we need change. We need someone to look at it from a different angle. I'm sorry. It just has to happen.
You're speaking my language. So you're not a career politician. Why is that an advantage right now and not a weakness? So you kind of described that, but maybe you could go deeper there.
Yeah. I mean, I come from the business community, so I've had to manage budgets, and I've had to start from scratch and wade through, the red tape that's turning into red cement to get from an idea to a finished product, whether you're building a home, putting in a runway, modifying a sewer treatment plant, or just building a business in general. So I know what the steps are and what it takes to get through. So I'm very familiar with that. But the problem is there's always a roadblock in front of us, or multiple roadblocks. And it starts with overregulation, too much government. And so, I've had to travel the road numerous times. And now in business, it's bordering on impossible to get through, to get to the end product without being so far behind, whether it's in debt or, time is money. And it's a time BC needs more revenues, not more taxes. We can't continue to just tax people to death. We've got to find ways of bringing in business. BC is open for business. When I become premier, it will be very clear to the world that BC is open for business, and we're going to find a way to get deals done, as I've done in the private sector.
Yeah, I think your experience in building might help reduce I hear of stories where it takes, years to get approval for anything. So how can we change that in this province? Because if we could build faster, we can make affordable housing affordable again. Because last year, 70,000 working age adults left the province. This is catastrophic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, housing in itself, I mean, we had meetings, and without all the details, we working with Habitat for Humanity, we're on this committee. And for instance, they got free land and free materials, and to build a sixplex took over 2 years, and cost $775 a square foot cost with free land. So, things are upside down. I'll tell you what, getting into government, you'll never see me sit up there and say, and you can hold me to it, that, hi, I'm from the government and I'm going to provide, or we're going to build affordable housing. because we can't. Government is not meant to be building it. They should be creating an environment so that the private sector can build housing in real time, and that will bring the cost down and make it affordable for everyone. I mean, a second point to that is, picture this. I remember when my first daughter Sydney was born, and she was a lovely, cute little. And I remember when she graduated university 21 years later. So if you could just picture, I don't know if you have any kids, Mark, or those of you watching, you remember when your daughter was born and she graduated from university. That's about 21 years. And that's about what it takes to get a mine approved in this province. So if you picture a timeline of your toddler or your newborn to graduating from school, and you put that in your brain as how much time that is, that's one of the reasons we're struggling to get investment in here in the resource sector, is the timeline that it takes to get anything approved. It takes a whole child's lifetime. They're newborn and sucking on their soother one day and graduating from university and getting married, and that's the time frame it takes to build a mine or get a large project from first application until it's completed. So I mean, that's just, people need to think about that, and we got to change that. Timelines have got to be shrunk up, or we're not going to get anything done. Pace, purpose, and direction. That's the thing. We need pace, purpose, and direction.
One thing that drives me nuts is seeing that we have businesses not able to do business in British Columbia, and then they just do it in the US and other jurisdictions. For example, I saw, which I don't know if you know this, but we don't allow food packaging because of the plastic involved in packaging the product. So we grow the food in BC, then we send it to the United States to get packaged, and then send it back to us. And during this tariff situation, we're paying tariffs on the food that we're importing from the US that we grew, in fact, in British Columbia. Can you believe this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another example, Mark. And I mean, apparently we're shipping. We don't want to burn natural gas here to create power. Or in Vancouver, they're trying to get rid of natural gas as a source of heat. So we're piping the natural gas that's here down to across the line into the US. They're putting it through a power plant there, creating energy, and then shipping the energy back into BC. So like I said, there's a lot of common sense, practical solutions, and I think ideology's got in front of all of this, and it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm appalled. I guess the more I get into this political arena, I'm really distraught at how mismanaged it is and how common sense is just absent.
No, I'm all about common sense. It's interesting when people ask, they're like, are you a centrist or right wing? Like, what are you? And I said, I'm nothing. All I am is I look at the data, I look at the math, and I say, what is the best option? And the best part is I adjust based on the information that I have. And it seems like you are that type of person, the common sense approach.
Yeah, I mean, people ask, are you right of, where are you on the right side? Are you more liberal? Look, my views really haven't changed in 25 years. We grew up hardworking, common sense, family first. Government doesn't need to be in your face. We've got a land rights issue in this province separate from any of the DRIPA stuff I'm sure you'll come to, but access to Crown land in this province, there's a lot of people that have homes, second homes, cabins, or use it for recreation across the province. And government's trying to stop or slow down access across these lands. Now, these lands belong to every British Columbian. And so, there's so many files that need to be addressed in a timely manner to clean things up. They're talking about taking away access or not maintaining a lot of these, roads and backcountry trails that provide so much joy to British Columbians when they're not working, right? And they're not, they're out with their families recreating. So there's just a lot of files that need to be cleaned up. And I get there's some ideology out there, but we can do things in a green manner, if you will. No one wants to see our province destroyed. But look, government is about, satisfying needs, not wants. We have to have the needs out there, and we have to watch that we're not over-regulating at every level. We have to, provide a school system and a healthcare system that provides good services and quality education to our children and to everyone who needs medical attention in this province. And we're failing on those two basic items.
Yeah, we're going to talk about education and the healthcare system. But before we go to that, I want to talk about energy. So right now, I believe we only have two refineries in British Columbia. To me, and the refinery in northern Burnaby, which is one of the two, and I believe there's another one in Prince George. But the one in northern Burnaby was sold to an American company for $9 billion earlier this year, or within the last 6 months. And that seems to me that we would sell. Imagine there was a fuel shortage in the United States and they own that refinery. The chances of us having a short, we're already, sometimes we see a refinery in the US like Cherry Point go into upgrades, or they're fixing their yearly maintenance, and then we get a 20 cents jump per liter in the Lower Mainland overnight. And until the upgrades, it seems like we're very susceptible to the United States, and then we sell the refinery. So to me, there's vulnerability in British Columbia with our oil or our gas supply, gasoline specifically. That needs to be addressed. Is that something that you've thought about?
Yeah, I actually looked that up a while ago as well to see how many refineries were just in the Northwest and down into Washington to see what we have close by. And certainly we have a couple in British Columbia. The volumes that they produce aren't that high compared to our needs. But yeah, we need to look at larger projects that'll be sustainable, provide products, and obviously fuel and diesel to us. Like, why are we buying it back from the States? Why are we selling off our refineries? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's confusing as to why we would even consider doing it. I get it. If you're going to get more for your business and it's a private refinery and you're offered a lot of money from a U.S. investor, you're going to sell it off. But we got to find ways to keep these assets in British Columbian hands and have it under our control. I mean, we've got more resources. We're a have province, and between us and our neighbor Alberta, we need to work together, in Western Canada to share the resources, grow the economy, share the wealth, and provide prosperity to everyone. When people are thriving, everything else falls into place. But, we've got to generate more revenues, and revenues don't come from taxes. I mean, we need revenues. That's what we need. People don't have any more tax money to give, and it will implode if we don't find a way to grow our economy quickly.
Yeah. I was born and raised in British Columbia. I was born in Burnaby, BC. And, growing up, it always felt like I could do anything in life, and I could do anything and be anything, and I would be successful in the province. But in the last decade, specifically the last decade, it's really unraveled. I see the Canadian youth and British Columbia specifically at 17% unemployment rate. We're seeing everybody flood out of the province. It's just so discouraging to see a province with so many resources get and just decimated. So it's nice to hear that there's a common sense person that sees that we could do a much better in this province, and we need radical change. So this leads me to, this is a very competitive race. In one sentence, why are you the best choice to lead this province?
I have the bandwidth and the experience outside of government to make real change.
So, I mean, I didn't go deep into the other, I know a bit about the other candidates, but so what you're saying is, out of all of the other candidates, you have the most business practical experience.
Yes, I've had to start from scratch with every business and work through, and I've been successful at every business I've touched. I've challenged in the Supreme Court. I've gone after government for misfeasance in public office and failure to act in good faith. So I've challenged government from the outside and won. I build things, I fix things for a living, and I'm an amazing team builder. that my other competitors, they don't have that skill set, period.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty interesting story. How many businesses have you been successful at creating?
Well, I've started more than a dozen corporations, sub businesses. I bought and sold them. Uh, I started in food and beverage. I've got a few development companies and construction companies, new home builders, civil construction, like I said earlier. I build things from scratch, literally subdivisions, put the pipe in the ground, put the manholes in the ground, design and build new homes, food and beverage, retail stores, consulting, working in aviation, taking aircraft from their smallest parts and putting them back together. Aircraft are very complicated, certainly helicopters, and so our economy is very complicated. So, being able to get the best people in the room for a common purpose. In this case, getting our province back on track. I met some people yesterday in Victoria who, all in their 60s and early 70s that want to be part of helping us get this back on track, that come from banking and investment and construction. And they were, it was great. They took the time with me. They were grateful that we got a chance to speak, and they'll be supporting us going forward with hundreds, if not thousands of others in this province who want real change.
Yeah. So I guess this leads me to, we hear that there's a lot of benefit to voting for you, but what would people regret if they chose someone else?
Well, we've got to look at this and reverse engineer it from getting elected and beating the NDP in the next election. So we have to offer them something different. If we put another seasoned politician in there, or we put another academic in, like one of my running mates has got a couple of degrees, and certainly their team is spinning that we need an academic to get us out of the mess of, the SOGIs and DRIPAs. But funny enough, it was the academics and the politicians that got us in the mess in the first place. So, I think it's a bit of a, it's going to be a tough decision. And hopefully the people that watch this and that I get to meet on the trail understand that we need a fresh approach that will actually make change versus just putting in the same old that have either been unsuccessful or have followed, the political river for the last 20 years and have taken from it. People don't have any more money to put into this, tax dollars. They don't have any more money to put in. So we got to find someone that can start businesses from scratch, grow revenues, attract investment. And politicians don't do that. They haven't been doing it. It hasn't been working. So
we're going to touch on private property. We're also going to touch on education, and we're going to also touch on our healthcare system. But before we go there, I want to take a look at, what if we fast forward from today and we wake up tomorrow and you're the premier of British Columbia by noon? What have you done?
By noon, what have we done? Well, we'll unite the caucus. We'll get in a room. We'll understand what our workload is, which is going to be overwhelming. And we're going to find agreement, and we're going to move forward with auditing the government, number one. There's going to be a blanket audit and process that will run through our whole term. And we have to figure out where the money's going. So that's the blanket process that will happen immediately. The second thing that will happen is we need to find a fix for this acute problem of not having emergency rooms open. It's just not acceptable. So we're going to pull out the stops and do what we have to do, and it's going to cost some money, but emergency rooms are going to be open. People can't be continuing to pay the taxes they pay in this province, have an ailment or have a child with a fever, go into an emergency room, have it closed, and have to drive 3 hours to the next hospital or drive 3 hours again to the next hospital, which happens a lot in the north. So especially these rural communities that don't have access to a second hospital, we'll be getting the emergency rooms open and staffed immediately. And that audit process is going to be put in place. That's one of the very first priorities. Figuring out where the money's going, because it's going somewhere. And
no
one's got any money left to give.
I haven't heard anybody else talk about a government audit. This is next level. I mean, I like the sound of an audit because there is so much waste that could be found, and that in itself could pay for the medical, the hospitals that are closed and there's not enough services for British Columbia. I believe that if you could find waste, that could go towards our healthcare system.
Absolutely. I mean, the government, and especially this NDP government, they're focused on where they can get more money from us, right? And rather than focusing on how are they spending the money. I mean, it's ridiculous. And look, I've spoken with lots of people. Not only I got a hip surgery 3.5 weeks ago, and I'm back to 98%. I mean, I spoke with doctors there. I have some friends. My daughters are both nurses who were in the profession for a while and are doing other things. But the waste that they see at every level, it's massive. So we've got to identify it, and then we got to start cutting this waste and redundancy out that we don't need. I mean, that and the big thing, I guess, is I'm going to put a big open for business sign out to the world immediately. We're open for business. You come to us. What do we need to do to get done? We've got to focus on revenues, not more taxes. That's got to happen. So an audit, get our emergency rooms open immediately, and we're open for business.
So what would British Columbians feel in the first 30 days of you being leader?
I think they're going to feel confident they've chosen a leader that's going to unite the party from within and recognize that there's different views there. And I think it's going to spread out through our caucus and through the MLAs. And we're going to prepare to support the other candidates that weren't elected in the last election to make sure we build a strong party, right, and a strong team to tackle the NDP when they call an election, which will be in the next 2 years. If it's one of the first priorities we have to do is our internal house cleaning, and then of course when we're elected, that's when we'll hit the blanket audit and try and get these emergency rooms open. I can't do it from a leadership position. We can push the NDP to do it, but David Eby's 6'6", has his head in the clouds and isn't really interested in listening to anyone else.
I like that, head in the clouds. Nice. So, affordability is out of control in British Columbia. We're really feeling the pinch. I mean, across Canada, but in BC, we pay some of the highest gasoline prices across Canada. I saw $2.19 a liter yesterday. It's probably the same today. I haven't checked this morning. As a leader, would you look to, I believe if the difference between gasoline in Calgary and the Lower Mainland is almost 70 cents, $1.50 in Calgary, I saw yesterday, and we're paying $2.19. And I believe that, that 70 cents is all taxes. So is that something you'll take a look at to reduce? We should be paying the same price as the rest of Canada. Why is it so expensive for BC?
Why is it so expensive for BC? Because we waste money. And again, we're just trying to increase the size of, no pun intended, the fuel hose that fuels our gas tank of revenues coming in. And the government just keeps trying to increase the size of it. And they forget there's a couple of siphon hoses in this tank that are just siphoning the fuel out as quick as we can put it in. I saw $2.41 yesterday in Victoria for diesel, a liter, $2.41 a liter. So, that's going to drive the cost of everything up. Taxation, we do need taxation. So, I don't know if the other candidates are getting out there saying they're going to slash all these taxes, but we can't. What we have to do is fix the gaping holes that are in our bank account, our fuel tank, if you will, because we're pumping the tax dollars in, but it's running out the bottom and it's running out all over the ground. So we've got to figure out a way, and that's where this audit comes in once we get into power, that will be a blanket audit that's on all the time looking for efficiencies and try and find a vehicle and feedback mechanism so that those are working in government, can report what they see, because there's people working in government who see the waste, and for some reason it's not being fixed. So there has to be a vehicle for them to report the waste as well and find out ways that we can fix it in real time. Just make those decisions, get the proper people in place that have the authority, to cut the waste and get rid of some of these layers of bureaucracy that provide no value to the finished product, which again, just drive the prices up.
All right. This is going to be a fun question. You probably don't know the answer, but that's okay. after you've done the audit or you're in the process, what do you expect? Like something to come out that you're just like, wow, I can't believe that this, you'll find something and it's just going to be shocking to everybody in BC. Do you think there's something? It's a far off question, but maybe there's some sense that you think there's going to be something that comes out of the audit.
Well, I think here's going to be the key, and the key for the Conservative Party of BC to stay in power for multiple terms is going to be transparency. As the leader, and if we get elected it's not a gimme that we'll get elected against the NDP. I think some of my running mates think we're going to be handed the next election, but David Eby's likely going to shuffle out of the way, and they'll probably put someone stronger in that's more moderate. So we've got our work cut out for us to win in the next election. But when we do, we've got to make sure that we're transparent in what we're finding, and so we've got to be able to report what we're finding to the general public. And while they may be angry and appalled, I think it's going to develop trust with me as your premier and the party, that they'll be upset and they'll recognize what those how poorly our government dollars have been mismanaged. And it's not to point the finger at a person, but at a process. And I'm sure it will flush out those decision makers that made decisions that weren't in the best interest of British Columbians. And hopefully that puts the NDP into extinction, and we build the trust with every British Columbian so that they continue to vote us into office, knowing that we're going to do the right thing, apply common sense, and be transparent in our decisions.
You said something there that terrified me. So you think that potentially they're going to do the same thing as they did federally, where they helicoptered in this global banker to fix everything, sell us the world, and it stole the election from a realistically change that we require in this country. And this same thing could happen in BC.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'll fly in a Mark Carney kind of global banker, but look, if I was the NDP, David Eby's got it so screwed up. He's not electable. Like, it's not going to happen. I know that this province, a default 30% in this province vote NDP, which means that we require to get 51% of 70, right, with 70% remaining. So we have to work extra hard just to get into power. But David Eby's going to be gone. I mean, he can continue to drive the bus into the ditch and at the cliff that's in front of him, or over the cliff that's in front of him. But they're going to put someone in more moderate, and they're going to play off the fact that that's fear and that the government's going to offer you more handouts, and that could be 2 years away. So once becoming the leader of the BC Conservative Party, we've really got three key tasks. It's to unite the party and streamline how we operate as a party. It's to grow our membership. It's to grow and support those representatives in every riding so that we can get as many members elected at the next election. And then the other third of the time will be to kick at the ankles of David Eby or whoever his replacement is, and keep us in the front of minds of all British Columbians as the only choice at the next election. I mean, this is not a gimme. And I guess I'm fearful that some of the other candidates running in this think they're just going to be handed an election after. And I caution those that are out voting in this party, our party members, that they choose a leader. They choose me to be the leader, because I understand that's what's going to happen. No one's talking about it, but they're going to strengthen their team in the NDP, and people may forget. They may make a bunch of promises that take votes toward the NDP, and we've got to be strong with our platform and commit to accountability with an audit and transparency when we go forward. And I will provide that as your leader. I'm not sure what the others will do, but I can tell you that I will provide that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody else. It's good that you're thinking about what the strategy is on the other side, because you're right. We need change in British Columbia. We can't continue to go down the same road as we've been going down. My question is, who's going to run this audit?
Well, we'll get a whole team. We're going to bring some people from from the outside to help us run the audit. I have some people in mind, some people that were involved in big insurance and accounting, worldwide leaders that help some of the biggest corporations in the world, and not even corporations, but they'll come in and they're going to help us audit this independently and build a system of transparency so that as we find inefficiencies, we'll be able to report it to the public and to the media, and they can have access to the information, and so that we can report it out to the public. Well, look, the public doesn't trust politicians. I mean, I say I'm a builder, not a bureaucrat, and really should say I'm a builder and not a politician and not an academic. A lot of the academics and some of my running mates have quite academic backgrounds, but that's what's got us into the mess, and we need a practical person that understands how to build things, building relationships, building buildings, building runways, building bridges, building tunnels. We do the tunnel bridge thing in Delta, and we're pissing away money there, and we still, the costs have doubled, and we need to get things built. We need to get things built.
That's a perfect segment to move to the most pressing issue for most British Columbians. And the reason why right now, if you look at the polling numbers for the NDP, they're being decimated right now. And it's because of the land claims, and half of the Lower Mainland's been given to the 1,500 Aboriginal, the Musqueam tribe, and it's really putting a damper on investment in the province. People are fearful for their property values. We saw a 40% reduction in the value of property in the Cowichan as they have now lost their title to Aboriginal claim. And this uncertainty is causing damage to the province. And so it needs to be dealt with. What's your take on this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there was a poll taken a while back, and it was done in the Lower Mainland on DRIPA and how that affects, is it the most important issue? And only 40% came back and said it was the most important issue. It's an important issue for me because I'm grateful to own property in this province. So I'm worried that I'm going to lose that. But there's a large portion of the province that can't own property. So for them, it's not overly important. That being said, the whole wealth of our province, our nation, and frankly, the world is based on the ability to own freehold title and to have, be able to build wealth with owning real estate, and to eventually have it owned free and clear, hand it down to your kids. But this Musqueam case and the Cowichan case are examples of what happens when you put legislation in place that isn't well thought out. And never mind, you didn't defend it properly in court when it comes to the Cowichan case, but it needs to get undone. It needs to get repealed. And look, First Nations needs to be involved, but there's a difference between consultation and consent when you move on to these, especially onto these big projects. Consultation with First Nations and parties involved is super important, but no one's going to have a veto power or consent to stop projects or affect people's land titles. I mean, you've got to have rights to your land, period. It's just the way it is.
It seems like this could be just a signature and it's done. It's gone.
Yeah, well, when you take things like DRIPA and SOGI, those are things that I see again. My with respect to my running mates, that you need the academics skill set to deal with these policies and remove them. And it's like, no, you don't. You give me a ballpoint pen. We get in there. I think we're united pretty much across our party. And certainly all British Columbians want to see this stuff gone. Those that affect them, the 40% in that one study that really affects them, they want it gone. They want it gone. Look, appraisals now, when you get an appraisal on your property, the Appraisal Institute is putting a highlighted footnote at the bottom saying, this appraisal is made such XXX, so many dollars. It's not affected by the land titles, but they put a land title issue, but they put a caveat at the bottom to say, it may or may not affect land value in the future based on ownership of the land, or similarly worded statement. So, if every appraisal is coming through and the banks are looking at, the banks are going to get nervous. They don't want to lend money to you, based on your ownership in the title if it ends up being owned by someone else, First Nations or other party. So, it's got to be dealt with right away. And there's no shortage of hot button items that need to be tackled. And it won't all be done through my office. We're going to delegate the workload to some other MLAs as well, and oversight by other MLAs and other professionals that we can bring in to help us manage these files, and people that are in the existing bureaucracy, some of the deputy ministers that will retain. So lots of work to do.
So basically what you're saying is if you're elected premier, we don't have to worry about our private property rights.
We're going to get rid of DRIPA. And so that's going to be gone. And we're going to look at what we have to put in place for protections behind it so that that's maintained. Yes, property rights, it's going to be maintained.
It feels like we need to close this whole thing. It's this forever compensation thing. It seems like we need to end it at some point because it just continues year after year and it gets larger and larger.
Right. I mean, we talk about treating everybody equally in this province, but yet there's all these other side deals. I guess the question becomes, and I guess that's where the tough decisions is. So how many generations forward, how many great grandkids that haven't been born yet, my great grandkids, will have to pay for my great grandfather's decisions in the past. We will be working with First Nations. We will go into partnerships with them on projects. Again, it's going to be consultation, not consent in that room, and it'll be real partnerships that are good for all parties and will be looked upon to be equitable for all parties. It can't be. I mean, I think there's 180 different First Nations in this province, and they've made claim to 125 or 130% of the land in the province. So just that math alone should draw some question marks. We need to share the land with all British Columbians, not just First Nations.
Yeah, I agree. So, one thing that bothers me is when we see, for example, the First Nations take ownership of the property and then they're able to build out these mega projects. Like there's one in Vancouver that they managed to build over $1 billion worth of real estate product. Yet when it's in the provinces or the city municipalities ownership, we can't build these projects. And I feel like that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that. I know which project you're talking about. It looks quite good from as you drive by. It's sort of modern looking. My understanding is there's actually no parking there, which is interesting. But I don't know how we have to figure out how we're going to deal with all parties in this province, private investment, government, First Nations, on how we can either partner together or provide an unfettered path for projects to get done in the province. There's too many roadblocks. Some projects move ahead faster because they don't have First Nations or other parties, impeding their progress. But I know at the municipal level, for instance, it's just there's too many layers to get anything done in real time. So municipalities suffer. And a lot of these rural communities that have smaller municipalities, the red tape is so deep, and that people are going to give up. They're going to move to other centers, and we're not going to be able to grow these small communities that we used to be able to do 15 or 20 years ago. They're shrinking. So.
Warren, I have to admit that it's nice that you would be able to come onto a podcast like myself and have an open discussion. I didn't give you any of the review of questions or what we're going to talk about. You came here with, hey, I'm ready to talk and I want British Columbians to get to know me and what my plan is. So I really appreciate your transparency here. I'm learning a lot from you. So thank you. And so people in British Columbia feel like they're getting taxed in every direction. We all feel it. The taxes are out of control. So which taxes in British Columbia punishes normal life the most?
Well, one that I think is important for those that are already landowners is the property transfer tax. So the one thing we're going to get rid of is the property transfer tax. When you go to hand your home down to your kids, a lot of families, they work their whole life to build a home for themselves or build a couple extra homes that they can rent or hand down to their children. And so I want to get rid of the property transfer tax when we're handing, second homes or third homes down to within the family group. Now, I understand there's lots of people in the province that this won't affect because they don't have a first home, never mind a second or third home. But we have to keep the government has to keep their hands out of families' pockets when they've built homes for their kids, and that's what they've spent their whole lives doing, is saving, paying these homes off, and they want to be able to leave their kids with a little bit better future internally within the family group. So getting rid of the property transfer tax is super important to me.
Amazing. So let's get into some of the more spicier topics. Immigration is a spicy topic. Many people say we've done it all wrong. The pace, and this is national, but also in BC, we have the temporary foreign workers. It's just got out of hand. So as Premier, realistically, what can you do about that?
Yeah, certainly immigration, federal policy. But as I speak to people in the community, I mean, the focus is on, and what comes back, it's wide range. Some people are saying, stop the immigration. Some are saying, well, you need to keep it going, or we won't have people for our delis and bakeries. When you talk to the grocery store people. So, look, I'm told there's 400 to 450 doctors in this province who immigrated here, who are assimilating here, who can't get their final sign off to become doctors in this province. They're stopped with the final chunk of red tape to get them approved as to be physicians. And that will help obviously in our healthcare system as well. But I think the key the common thread throughout this, as I talk to people, is we need to keep immigration open. But it's the quality of person, not the quantity. And that stands for itself. What is it we need? Is it more doctors? In this case, we have lots of doctors, but they're not getting through the finish line. But look at what professionals want to come here and make sure that we can get the door open working with the feds so that we can get them into society and into these jobs to support, healthcare and, whether it's healthcare, housing, even law enforcement. We've got qualified people that want to come and live here. Let's get them approved and get them into their chosen professions.
Yeah, it sounds like you are on side with Pierre Poilievre's immigration policy, where he says that we had the best immigration system for 200 years. And it just, we'd build infrastructure, we'd have housing, we'd have everything so that it was sustainable. But when you bring in too many people, and then it causes issues with everything.
Yeah, it upset the apple cart, Mark. I mean, with Trudeau, they just opened the doors and let everybody in. And a lot of them weren't vetted properly. And, that's why we're getting some of these crimes and extortion crimes, especially in the Lower Mainland in Surrey. I've spoken with a lot of people that are key in that community. And, funny enough, in that South Asian Indo-Canadian community, they want to see it. Some will say they want immigration stopped, but that when you go to the small town grocery store business, they say, let's, Italian, multi-generational grocery store business who, says keep immigration open because we won't keep the bakeries and delis open. So there's a wide range of views on immigration. I think the province has got its hand tied a little bit because it's federal policy, but certainly will be lobbying and working with the federal government to support a policy that, again, focuses on quantity, on quality, not quantity of people coming into this country. Also, when people come into the country, they're expected to follow the rules. If they break the law and they continue to break the law, we'll have to put some guidelines in there. If you break the law and it's a serious offense, well, then you're going to go back to your other country. We don't need you coming here, breaking the law, and then using our resources and services here when your intentions are not good. You can go back to your own country. And so we can work with the feds on that as well. and maybe that'll deter the wrong people from wanting to come here, and we can continue to get great people that are willing to assimilate and grow their families in every corner of this province.
I knew I'd like you. This is common sense. There's one thing, I have a radical idea. If we actually made life more affordable in Canada, people would have families again. People would, we would grow our population naturally because our replacement, we're below 1. People are not having kids anymore. And the primary reason for that is life is so unaffordable. People are like, I can't have children. So if we made life affordable in Canada, we wouldn't have to rely so much on immigration. That's just my take on this. But
yeah, I mean, you're right. You met my family on the weekend at the event we spoke about earlier, and my 2 daughters who are, both hardworking girls with nursing degrees. One working in law now, the other one's rolled over in the medical profession, is back in the medical profession, and they have businesses of their own. Are both single, in their late 20s, early 30s. And I think they would like to start a family, but finding a spouse that is that are working at a high level and combining incomes. Both my daughters make very good money, but can't afford to buy a house. And if they can't afford to buy a house, how can they think about starting a family? I mean, when my daughters were born in the early 90s, we were able to buy a house and we were able to talk about starting a family. And we were able to provide, one parent to be at home for a length of time as the kids were growing up. But right now, if you are a young couple and you're both working full-time plus, and you don't see hope in front of you of being able to own your own home, or that's why would you start a family? You're going to just continue to go backwards. And you're right, affordability, we're taxed too much. Inflation and the cost of everything is just another form of tax. So we've got to make some change. And I'm worried about this leadership race that people have got to get out and vote for me if they want to see real change. I get asked all the time which other leader I like the best. And I got to be honest, I'll just be straight up in this interview. I really like Carrie Lynn Finley from the sense of experience that she's got. But, she's 71 years old, and it's going to be a 10-year commitment to work on this 7 days a week. And I'm the only one that's got the bandwidth experience that's come from the outside that's going to make a real difference. And, the other ones are more polished and they've got more degrees and they can read off the teleprompter better and maybe have a larger vocabulary. But, we need to put an adult in charge, and it's me. That's who's got to be in charge to get us back on track.
This leads me perfectly. What about crime and drugs? We have a huge problem in BC with crime, specifically with drug use. I try to bring my, so I have children, and I try to bring my son downtown on the SkyTrain so we could do the seawall with the bike. And this was his first time on public transportation. And inside the cart, you won't believe this, because this is something unheard of, even 5 years ago. But somebody was smoking crack on the SkyTrain in the cart with my son. And so these are things, it's getting out of control in the province. This is just one example of real life experience that I've had. And nobody said anything, which is, and I get it, because if you say something, who knows what this person's going to do? So we just got out and went into another train, but I have yet to go back on the SkyTrain with my son. It's so sad. And we're seeing, tent cities across the province. Things need to change. So what does that look like for you?
Well, it's affecting emergency rooms. I had a friend a while ago had an asthma attack. So we jumped in a cab together and went there to support, and went in emergency and waiting there, and there were drug addicted people coming in there out of control, trying to get through the glass at the people behind the glass at admitting and looking for free drugs. And even security sort of dealt with it, but there was no way to keep them out of the space, or they chose not to. It's everywhere. But our previous government decided to use the experiment of giving people free drugs to solve a drug problem. And I mean, I just don't get that. That doesn't seem common sense in any way, shape, or form. We've got to get institutions open where we can pull these people. Many of them are suffering from mental health issues. So that's, we can't lump them all into one group, but there's some commonality between the drugs, mental health issues, homelessness, it's not shrinking right now. So we're going to have to find some tools. There was some discussion of whether we can open older facilities that used to house, people with disabilities as far as mental health issues. But we've got to find a way to treat them, move them out somehow, because it's affecting, never mind tourism safety like you just mentioned, riding the SkyTrain, and there's someone on there doing drugs in plain view, and no one even they're all staring at their phones and no one wants to deal with it. I mean, we're going to have to deal with it. So it's a complex problem, but right now there's no outlet or no space for those people to go to. And we continue to feed it with illegal drugs and legal drugs through our system with the intention that we want to help them. But it's not working. So again, we need fresh views on this. And I don't think, there's we've got to get the best people in the room and figure out what paths we can take to start to slow it down and reverse what's going on. It's complicated. We'll have to figure it out.
So my take on this is, and just talking to people, I have friends that unfortunately they're in the depths of alcoholism. I've talked to a lot of people. I say, why are you doing this to yourself? There's just so much, life is precious. And what they've said and what I've heard is that, there's just the economy and there's just no hope. So I think that if we could turn this province around and provide people with the opportunity to own a detached house if they want, they could own a boat, they could dream big again, it will definitely change the perspective, because a lot of people, they did everything right. They went to school, got a post-secondary, or they got their master's degree and they're a teacher, or they're a nurse or anything. And yet they can't even have a family. These things is what creates the dependency on substances, because you're dumbing all the pain that has been created by a fabric of society that is clearly broken.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the key word you said there, and I saw it coming, was the word hope. I mean, if people don't hope, if they don't have hope in front of them, I mean, it's why a lot of kids will, they stay in their parents' home in the basement, drinking alcohol or smoking cannabis and playing video games and selling pictures of their feet online. That looks like an upside for them, And so I think those that give up hope, we've really got four choices. We number one, we ignore what's going on. We bury our heads in the sand. Some people are apolitical. They'll never watch this podcast. They want to stay out of it completely. So it's an option. People that are in their 80s or, in the last, portion of their life, I don't want to get involved. I just kind of want to get to the finish line. So burying our heads in the sand, whether we don't have hope and live in our parents' basement, are apolitical, don't care, or elderly and don't want to be involved, that's an option, burying your head in the sand. Number two is, we sell all our assets and move. If there's not hope for me if I'm going to continue to lose what I've grown over the last 30 years and have nothing left, then that's an option. Or you get involved at a high level, which is what I'm doing politically. That's why I'm coming from the outside. Very costly process for everything, for my family. But everybody's on board and supports change, and people in this province are reaching out and turning toward me, and we're gaining a ton of momentum as we get toward the finish line. So getting involved at a high level, or supporting people that are getting involved at a high level, which is what we've received across the province. So there are really four options: bury your head in the sand, sell everything and move, get involved at a high level, or support people at a high level. Those are our options. And with that, if we can get the right people in power, like myself, then we will make real change, and people will see it. The problem, or the request that comes in, is patience, because the water level's right here right now, and it's going to take 6 years to really get it down to here. So, you asked me earlier, what changes are you going to see immediately? I mean, this ship is, headed for the rocks, and just because we turn the wheel all the way to the right, it's going to take some time for the bow to move. And if we don't make a change now, we could bump along the rocks a bit longer before we get back into open water. And hopefully we haven't ripped an irreparable hole in the hull, So yeah, some patience has to go in because it's going to be a lot of hard work to get us back on track.
I can really appreciate what you said because, even myself, I've lost a lot of hope in this province. I was born here. I don't want to go anywhere. I love the nature. I love my family lives here. But I've also been thinking in my mind that maybe it's time to move to Alberta, give my children a better life. So to hear that, hear from you that you're a common person, you worked hard your entire life and you said, you know what, it's time for change. And if not me, then who? And you're stepping up to save this province instead of just packing up, even though maybe you lose and you decide we're both moving to Alberta together because we need change in this province. So I'm glad that I brought you on to my platform so you could share to other people in this province your vision for this province. Because like I was surprised because I didn't hear from you before. Like you're not present on social media. I'm really glad that I came across you.
Yeah, and it was great to meet you on the weekend, and I appreciate you having me on the show because I've got to get my name out there. And when I speak with people, they align with me quite easily because we just speak open and honest, and we recognize we have all the same challenges. So, but again, it's a race, and those with well-oiled political machines tend to get more exposure. Certainly I can run my own polls for X dollars to put myself in the lead, like has been happening with a lot of the other candidates. Certainly, they all appear to be swapping first place. But, it's ultimately out to the people that watch this. If you're not a member of the Conservative Party of BC, and I understand maybe you don't want to be part of the party, but if you want to be part of the solution and you watch this podcast here with Mark, you need to go out, get a membership for $25 for the 4 years, register before April 18th, and it will give you a chance to vote for me. You have to be a BC resident. So you can go to warrenhambc.com to find out more about myself. And if you want to donate or volunteer and you like what I've said today, or you want to ask some more questions, you can find us there at warrenhambc.com. But get out and get a membership because if you don't get a membership, you can't vote for your leader. And this is different than the general election. You need to choose the right leader. I hope you choose me. I will work my butt off, and I will be available, and I will do what I say I'm going to do. So get out there and choose who you think is going to be the best leader for the Conservative Party of British Columbia, and hopefully your next premier, if we can work hard and put a good face together for the next election.
Yeah, $25 is not much. So do it today. You only have 2 weeks left. So just pay the $25. Then you get to pick who could lead this province. But before you do that, I have the real Loomis test to see if you're the right person for the job. This is probably the most crucial question I had today because I have young children in our education system and they're subject to SOGI. And for me, that's a big problem. So if you became premier, what would you do with SOGI? And is there a solution, another option that you have?
That's a great question, Mark. Yes. So SOGI will be repealed immediately. No questions asked. It will get done as soon as possible because we can't get between parents and their kids when it comes to talking about the items in SOGI. I get it was put in place to be anti-bullying, but it's just evolved into something that doesn't belong in the school system. People have other resources. They can talk with their counselors or doctors or other family units to manage that exercise, but that's not something that belongs in the school, so it will be gone. When it's gone, we've got to recognize the world that we're in today. Certainly on this podcast, carries a lot of weight, and the way we handle media now between social media, all the platforms, and we see that mainstream media is sort of falling off. That means the world's really changing. So I think it's important to start educating kids in the classroom at an early age. And what we've developed is a program called SMART. It's social media awareness and responsibility training. SMART with an A, not just SMRT. And so this social media awareness and responsibility training would start in kindergarten and go through grades 8 or 9. and provide guidance and education that deals with anti-bullying, that deals with what you post on the internet is on there forever. You know, this interview will be on the internet forever, and you know, certainly I'll have to look at my face in the future on this podcast. And so it's important that we have a program in place that teaches kids all the way up to grade 9 about responsibility. You know, AI is evolving very quickly, so there's a way to sort of lap that in there as well, and also give parents the option to opt out of this. There may be parents that don't want their kids exposed to social media, cell phones, and access to the internet until an age of their choosing. And I think that's important. But I think we need to have the education available in the classroom right from kindergarten to at least grade 8 or grade 9.
What would you call this?
It'll be called SMART, Social Media Awareness and Responsibility Training. We've got the outline laid out, so it would have to go to educators and would have to go upstream to be refined on how it will be implemented in the classrooms. But I think it's going to be. And now I spoke with some youngsters yesterday. They're youngsters, they're in their early 20s, and they do get a little bit of training in schools. As I said, they got a little bit late in high school. But I think the key to this is starting early. I think a lot of these other issues to do with young mental health or confusion or stress that start with young kids as they're growing up in their own peer groups, I think it's always been there, but I think we're just handling it differently. So I think there's a responsibility on the schools to provide adequate training that will also, assist parents in learning as well when it comes to social media and awareness and responsibility training. So I think it makes sense to add it in at an early age.
Well, you just got, you won my heart over, because what they're doing with this ideology in school, leave the kids alone. They're not even developed yet. They don't need this. This stuff should be kept between the parents and the medical doctors, exactly how you said. And I actually do like replacing that with practical solutions to keep the kids safe, specifically with technology, because it feels like when I ask my kids, what did you learn today? They're teaching the kids stuff that I learned like 40 years ago, 30 years ago. We haven't evolved to the pace of technology and what's going on. So it would make sense that we changed our education system to be in, year 2026 moving forwards, and, AI, different social media and protections, and teaching that at school. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and the basics have to be maintained. I guess I should have led with that is, the reading, writing, and arithmetic that we talk about all the time, and phys ed and entrepreneurship. All of these things can be taught through the high school to keep engagement with students. I mean, my kids are older now, but I've got friends that have younger kids and ask them, what happened at school today? What did you learn? And you don't get a lot back, or they've got a lot of days off. We want them to be at home and kind of engaged in what they learned during the day. We want them excited. I don't want to say homework, but we want them to get home and still want to be working on their education naturally. My kids excelled at that. They would work, and study a lot at home, not with their parents, not putting pressure on them, because they really liked school and they wanted to educate themselves. So I think we've just really gone off track with the education system, and I know it shows in certain sectors. I know we've had a lot of employees into their late teens to early 20s, and it's different than when we came out of school. I mean, I was fixing helicopters when I was 21 years old, and started a family not long after that. So, a lot of the 21-year-olds today, again, if they don't have hope and they haven't had the basic education, they're not going to be out there in the trades like I was, or into the university system. So we've got to give them a proper education. The other thing, if I could just touch on for education, is I spoke with some people last week whose kids were in that 95, 97th percentile and wanted to get off to UBC and go to university, and they're residents and citizens of Canada, residents of British Columbia, and couldn't get into the universities and are forced to go to the States to go to university at a higher cost. but are forced to go down there because they can't get in locally in British Columbia because we're taking in a ton of foreign students. So I think that's something we've got to look at in our post-secondary education is how are we going to balance the needs of those students that really excel, that come out of high school, that need to get into our local universities, but can't get in because there's not enough seats, and we're choosing international students over locals with almost identical qualifications and reporting. So that's something that also has to be looked at because we're losing locals that live here. They go to the States and then they end up staying in the States. So we're driving away our most talented young Canadians to go to another country or go to another province. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
You know what? I think we could talk all day. I had planned a 40-minute interview with you, but I mean, I'm learning so much. So I'm glad that you were able to stay on longer so that people could get to know you like I've gotten to know you. Before we end, I have a few more, if that's okay.
No, go ahead.
So we just found out that Yuri Fulmer signed an agreement with Dallas Brody. Would you consider something similar, or, what's your take on that? Because we need to unify the right. That's why we're having a leadership candidate, is because the right has been broken. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I saw that come through, and I think it only comes to fruition if Yuri Fulmer wins this leadership race. I think it was either genius or the reciprocal to put that together. Unite the Right makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure that he's in a position to cut a deal with another party when you're not yet a leader of that. So I think it's a bit of political maneuvering, but it certainly got people's attention. He was also offering dollar beers and free Zin, or to bring Zin back to whatever that is. I learned about what it is previously. So I think it's trying to get attention. I think it worked. I think it's drumming up memberships. I think there is a sort of Dallas Brody. I've spoken with both Yuri and Dallas Brody over the last few months, and they're both very passionate. And but I think we need to bring the party together. That is the BC Conservative Party, or Conservative Party of BC, with the membership that's there. I think attaching to another party and what that suggests of whether it's combining the parties or splitting the number of seats or the number of people that will be running in each riding. I'm not sure we're in a position to do that. We're in this leadership race not to grab attention for the sake of attention, but to put our best platform forward on how we're going to unite the BC Conservative Party, which and its membership, so that we can compete against the NDP and become the BC Conservatives will be the next party in power to help right this province. So, I think there's a bunch of noise in that. But I guess I like its concept of unite the right, but we've got to really unite the party is what we've got to do.
All right. I think that to close, we're at the end here. So I want to, well, first of all, before we close, and I have a very good question for you at the end. So for everybody that's out there, go and get yourself a membership so that you get to decide. And it's only $25. So I'm going to put inside the description of this video a link to your page so that people could register and that they could sign up. When we're talking about numbers, can you talk to me about numbers here? So we have 2 weeks in order to register, and registration could occur within a minute. You could just put your credit card down, put your name, and then you're registered, and then you could vote. Can you talk about the numbers? So I believe how many conservative, how many people have registered to be a conservative?
Well, the last list, so we had to bond to get a list of the membership, and the last list we had 13,000 members on it. Of course, everybody's been raising memberships since then, so we're probably in excess of maybe 20,000. But what's key to this is it's the members that actually get to vote for their leader, and we need people to sign up in every corner of the province. So if you're watching this and you live in Atlan or Fort Nelson or Prince George or 100 Mile House or the Island, it's important that we get people to sign up in every area. And then then get out and vote. There'll be a process for voting. You'll get some email. You'll get a lot of spam emails, which we're trying not to send from all the candidates wanting to send you, asking for donations and asking for other things. So we're trying not to spam people, but you need to get out and get a membership. I appreciate the link, which will go through me. So I'll be able to see how many people signed up just through this platform. And the other key thing is, just because you sign up through me, if you're like, I like you, but maybe I'll look at what the other leaders are doing, you can still sign up and become a member. It's a ranked ballot, so you can rank me as number one if I'm your favorite, or number two if I'm your second favorite, and so forth. But it's important that you get out and vote. So I'd urge everyone to have a listen to the other leaders, look at their backgrounds, see if you want to have someone with just lots of political experience, or if you want a fresh face with fresh ideas that knows how to build a team. If you want to donate to our campaign or volunteer, I can give you that stuff as well. And it's really, it's how we raise money to stay on the road, pay the fees, and make time to, away from work. We don't get paid to do it, but we need to raise the money to pay for the exercise, to get out in front of you, and in hopes that we'll get chosen to become your next leader. So I appreciate any support, whether it's financial, volunteer, but get out and get a membership no matter what. Even if I'm going to be your second choice, get a membership and figure out who your number ones and number twos are going to be.
So it's 1 and 2. There's no 3. So you pick your top choice or second choice.
Yeah, it's a ranked ballot. So depending who's left come the final ballot, there could be up to, at this time, there could be up to 6 people on there. You don't have to fill them all in order. You can just choose your number one. If you just only like me, and you've definitely made a choice. But if you like me and you're like, well, I think this other person might make a not a bad second choice, then you can fill that in, or you can fill it in order, 1 through 6 if you like. So most people are kind of doing the 1s and 2s unless they've really got someone they like and they just like, you know what, he's my man or she's my person. I'm gonna vote for them.
So so you talked about different areas. So it counts each area. How does that work? You said different areas.
So in summary, there's 93 ridings, and there's 100 votes available in each riding. So if there's a minimum of 100 members in every riding, and I get half the votes in every riding, well, I'll get whatever, 4,650 votes, which is enough to get me across the line and become your leader. But if you've got a place like Surrey where 5,000 people come out and vote in that riding, there's still only 100 points available. So if I get 2,500 in that riding, I'll get 50 points. So it's a 100-point system times 93 ridings. So it seems to work quite well, but it's really important for people in these rural areas to get out and vote. You actually have a larger say from a rural area on choosing your leader per vote than anyone else in the urban centers. So, get out and vote. We'll provide you the link. I thank you for that, Mark. You've got to be a resident of British Columbia. Certainly appreciate any support on the financial side, but you really need to get out and become a member so you can get out and vote. And that's how I'm going to win this. So get out and make yourself heard.
And that's pretty good because a lot of the hospital closures are in small communities. So if you live in a small community and you want a hospital that stays open, register to be a conservative so you could have a say and have these hospitals opened.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, with the blanket audit that we're going to do, the first step is to get these emergency rooms open again, because people have got to have them in the small communities. They really feel left behind. The North is typically votes conservative, but the issue they have in front of them right now is not whether they vote conservative or NDP or other, but is that they choose the right leader that they believe in, who's actually going to represent them, and not just be a recycled politician or bureaucrat. That's not going to bring change. There's some very nice people that are running, but they've been doing this a long time. And how has the last 15 years felt? Just because they've got the last 15 years in political experience, I'm not sure they're the right people to be in charge, because things haven't been going that great, frankly. So,
yeah, that leads me to my final question for you. When you envision British Columbia in the future, this beautiful province that we were born and raised in, what does that look like?
You remember the days when they used to run those beautiful British Columbia ads on television? I certainly remember them, and we were proud of our province. And the Olympics were coming to Canada. People were volunteering and working together. We didn't see the homelessness in the streets like we do now. Drugs was not as big an issue as it was. They're certainly not visible on the streets. A lot of families were hanging in the parks. They were going for 2 or 3 week vacations. They were out camping across the province. You don't see it like you used to. People don't have the dollars. A lot of them are dealing with mental health crises. They're trying to save for a babysitter, all week that they got enough so they can go on a date night. Going out for dinner costs 2 or 3 times as much as it used to, not that long ago. So I envision us going back to that, where people are thriving, people are interacting more one-on-one, they're spending time in the outdoors, they're accessing the recreational property across this province, they're out fishing where they can keep the fish that they catch. The fish aren't owned by someone else in this province. We want to get smiles back on people's face, get the sunshine out, and put hope back in people's hands. And if you vote for me, it's really important, you guys, get a membership, get out there, vote for me. And I think I'm your last hope. If we miss on this, we choose the wrong leader, and we lose to the NDP in this next election, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to likely do the Trudeau Carney shuffle and put someone in there that's more palatable than David Eby. There's risk that we're too late. So, you need to take some personal responsibility. And I know it's $25, and that's for some people's, going to be a struggle. But get out there. It's you, small people, getting out there to vote that are going to really make the difference. So get out and vote for me, and give me the win. And I'll build the team, and I'll work with the group that's there in the party. Recognizing that we may have to bring people from outside the party back in if they want to play nice and are part of the solution, and then we'll move together as a coherent unit, leading with respect and accountability and transparency, and we'll help right this ship, get it back on its feet.
You know what, Warren, I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to meet you. So I didn't know Warren before a week ago. I'm so happy that I ran into you. I had the opportunity to meet you and your family, and also had the opportunity to interview you today, and without any predetermined questions or anything. And I truly feel like you were transparent with me today, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it was great to meet you. And I prepared a lot of notes and questions, but I thought, I can read off the script or have the teleprompter running in the background, but people have had enough of that crap. And as I watch, my competitors with these kind of slick presentations, and, I hope people aren't fooled by it. I hope they want a real person in there that's going to represent them in real time. And, my phone is always on, and I'll be working 7 days a week. It's only 10 years of my life that I'll commit to this until we hand off to someone else, unless I'm thrown from the bus. But the plan is, when we start making change, and when we're transparent with people, and they can see not just reporting the errors of the past, but when they see that we're actually providing transparency, and you guys will get to report on that, they'll recognize that we can be trusted, and I can be trusted to build the right team, and represent all British Columbians. Even in the next election, if you vote NDP because you think that's your choice, I understand. Like, I get that. It's either family values, or you have your reasons for doing that. But when I'm elected as the next premier, I will represent you and everyone else in this province, and will treat people equally and with respect.
Yeah, you seem like the candidate of truth, integrity, and competence. That's what I got from today.
Well, I have those 3 qualities, and, it typically doesn't, or in the past, it hasn't fit the political mold. So, maybe the most experienced politician will get elected, and we'll get more of the same. But I'll make decisions on my future after we figure out who the next leader is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Warren.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. I appreciate your time, and thanks for just having an open discussion with me.
Absolutely.